Mr. Chair, Your Honors, magandang tanghali po sa ating lahat. The Secretary of National Defense respectfully defers to the determination of the appropriate agencies having competent jurisdiction over the subject matter. Nonetheless, the Department and the Armed Forces of the Philippines are fully committed to comply with whatever decision whether to proceed with the conduct of the first regular elections in the Bangsamoro this 2025 or to reset it in 2026, we undertake to comply with whatever decision is made by the competent authorities. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Asek, next from the Office of the Special Assistant to President, Asek Maria Margarita. Heralde
Ria
Chua.
Lumapas.
Ria Lumapas.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, yes, Asek Ria.
Yes.
Please, you
Good
have the floor.
afternoon, Mr. Chair, Senator Ejercito. My courtesies also to the honorable senators here and the members here of the distinguished body. We thank the Senate Committee on Local Government for this invitation. At the outset, we wish to express, on behalf of the Office of the Special Assistant to the President, our full support to this initiative on the resetting of the first regular elections, parliamentary elections in the BARMM. This position was arrived at upon a careful study of the relevant laws, particularly the Bangsamoro Organic Law, the Bangsamoro Electoral Code, and the Bangsamoro Autonomy Act 58, which is the Parliamentary Districting Act of the BARMM, and also upon consultation with key stakeholders within the BARMM. So while we agree that the elections are the ultimate expression of the will of the people and the expression of the genuine autonomy of the BARMM. And in fact, the national government, the president has been consistent in its pronouncements that we look forward to the conduct of the first parliamentary elections. There were several developments that necessitated a further study of this whole thing, and this was re-echoed with Chair Garcia and Secretary Galvez as well. The promulgation of the decision of the Supreme Court on the exclusion of Sulu. So that decision was a big decision because one, it upheld the constitutionality of the Bangsamoro Organic Law and the presence of a parliamentary form of government under a unitary form or under a unitary system as constitutional, but at the same time it removed Sulu from it excluded Sulu from the BARMM. So this development raised several serious legal questions that need to be addressed in order to ensure that we are not violating the Bangsamoro Organic Law. And we all know here that the BOL is not just any ordinary law passed by Congress, it was also ratified by the people in a plebiscite. And more importantly, it's a product of the peace process. And I think it bears stressing also that why we want to highlight also the peace process because internationally, our peace agreements and the Bangsamoro Organic Law has been looked upon with favor from the international community. It's one of the remaining functioning peace agreements that we have. And of course, we want to uphold the genuine and meaningful autonomy which our Bangsamoro brothers have long been fighting for. So going back, while yes, we agree that there needs to be an election, the current legal infrastructure surrounding the conduct of these elections have to be in order and in keeping with the spirit and mandate of the Bangsamoro Organic Law. Now, we, in the position paper that we submitted, we posed there two important legal questions. As discussed earlier, it's the mandatory composition of the Bangsamoro Parliament. In fact, under the BOL, the wording there is that the composition of the Parliament is 80 members unless otherwise increased by Congress. So this has a mandatory nature. But the exclusion of Sulu would substantially alter the 80 composition, the mandatory composition there because it will remove 7 parliamentary district seats from Sulu. So that needs to be addressed as well. Secondly, the reapportionment and the redistricting. In order also to address the questions earlier by Senator Gatchalian, right now the current wording of the Sulu decision is that while it is not yet final, it is immediately executory. But to date, no injunction has been issued, so the decision remains to be executory and should be implemented because there is no stay order yet as for its implementation. So both the BOL and the Electoral Code are pretty explicit on the matter that the reapportionment of the parliamentary districts are delegated to the BTA for the first parliamentary elections. And so, but as with any legislative process, and I guess I think the members of the BTA will also be able to give their inputs on this. As with any legislative process, any amendatory act would have to go through the usual legislative process, would have to undergo public consultations and hearings, and this act is not a perfunctory act. Of course, you would have to consult with your constituencies and there has to be genuine public consultations and hearings. And so, based on these things, from our office, as we see it, there needs to be an ample time for the parliament to enact the amendatory laws and to give them time to address these things and conduct all the necessary public consultations and hearings that they need to. And given the current timeline that we have, the printing of the ballots, which will be at December, the time is not enough until before the 2025 elections to address all this because we need to have the correct and the proper legal infrastructure surrounding the conduct of the first election. So to ensure an equitable, proportional representation of the voters and also to prevent the disenfranchisement of the voters of the BARMM and including the need to study all the legal implications, this is why we have come up with this position to support the resetting of the first parliamentary elections of the BARMM. So thank you again and thank you to the body and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Assistant Secretary Ria. Next, we want to hear, the chair would like to hear from the DBM, opposition paper.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Senator Gatchalian, and Senator De La Rosa. In terms of funding, as mentioned earlier by the COMELEC chair, there are funds allocated in the FY 2025 NEP for the BARMM elections. Hence, and the 2025 GA will be valid until the FY 2026. Hence, if the BARMM elections will be moved to 2026, the COMELEC may still utilize its funding under the FY 2025 GA. Moreover, if there will be additional funding requirements for the purpose, the same may be proposed by the COMELEC in their budget proposal for 2026, and the same shall be subject to the usual budget process. Finally, since the COMELEC is authorized to use its savings and available funds of COMELEC may be also be tapped if there will be special elections if needed po. That's all po, Mr. Chair. Thank you po.
Okay, thank you. Tricia Baraan. Before we continue, meron pa po tayong ibang agencies and yung mga nag-file sa Supreme Court, some NGOs. Si Chairman George Garcia because he has to go ahead, no? Alam naman natin coming yung elections next year. So Chairman George, you have the floor for your
Salamat po muli, Mr. Chair and the members of the committee. Meron lang po tayong nakakalimutan na bagay. Kasi po, nakafocus lagi tayo dun sa 7 na nawala. At naintindihan po ng COMELEC yung posisyon ng Bangsamoro Authority kung bakit hanggang ngayon ng Parliament hindi mabago kasi pag biglang nagdesisyon na biglang 80 pala tapos na i-distribute na, so paano mo ibabalik? So naintindihan po natin yon. Ang wag pong makakalimutan sana ng lahat ay yung 40 na members coming from the political parties. Tatandaan po ng lahat na bago lumabas ang desisyon ng Korte Suprema sa binabanggit natin na desisyon, yung po kasing 10,000 members dapat ang isang regional political party. Kasi po sa kanila, Mr. Chair, Your Honors, sa kanilang election code, kung sino ang makakakuha ng 4%. Kung halimbawa po 10 ang pinayagan ng COMELEC na mag-participate sa Bangsamoro parliamentary election, at sa 10 regional political parties na yon, isa lang ang nakakuha ng 4%. Yung buong 40 kanya na seats. Yun po yung nakalagay sa kanilang code. Kung dalawa, o di po proportionately hahatiin po yung 40. Pero nakalagay po doon sa Bangsamoro election code na ang isang regional political party ay dapat may 10,000 members. At sa 10,000 members na yon, dapat properly represented ang lahat ng mga probinsya. So nung nag-file po sila sa amin, kasama po ang mga members coming from Sulu. Kaya po ang ginawa po namin, nag-order kami sa kanila, baguhin nyo yung sinubmit nyo sa amin. Tanggalin nyo lahat yung mga members coming from Sulu at pagkatapos po ay isubmit nyo sa amin this time, excluding all members coming from Sulu. Dahil hindi na nga parte ang Sulu sa Bangsamoro. So nagsubmit po sila sa kasalukuyan, kaya po nag-accredit kami ng 10 regional political parties na excluding members coming from Sulu. And therefore, kung ano man yung mangyayari po sa Korte Suprema or whatever, may implikasyon po doon sa membership ng Sulu. Then therefore, kung sasabihin ng ating Korte Suprema na, o sige, kasama na talaga ang Sulu, paano po yung mga political parties? Lahat po sila disaccredited kasi wala po ang Sulu. So yun po yung gusto lang namin din sabihin. May implikasyon po doon sa 40 na ihahalal na mga miyembro ng regional political. Meron po kasi silang parang party list sa atin sa national. Ang kanila po ay yung mga regional political parties. 40 po yun yung naka-allocate para sa kanila. So sana po ma-factor in din sa ating pong policy consideration yung pong mga regional political parties na kanila ang 40. So far po as of this time, 10 po ang aming accredited na regional political parties sa buong Bangsamoro Autonomous Region.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Senator
with your
Gatchalian.
permission, I'd like to take advantage of the